The atmosphere is doing something right now that forecasters have not seen since the catastrophic outbreak sequence that tore through the central United States back in April. And the data coming in from every major weather modeling system on the planet is pointing toward the same terrifying conclusion. The worst storm since April is coming. And based on everything the science is telling us, this one has the potential to be even more destructive, more widespread, and more deadly than what millions of Americans already lived through just weeks ago. To understand just how serious this threat is, you need to remember exactly what happened during the April outbreak sequence. From April 23rd through April 28th, 2026, a multi-day tornado outbreak tore across the western and central United States, producing a confirmed total of 101 tornadoes in just 5 days. Like and subscribe, because on April 23rd alone, a massive stovepipe tornado with estimated peak winds of 180 miles per hour ripped through Enid, Oklahoma, earning an EF4 rating and prompting only the 9th tornado. Emergency ever issued in the history of the National Weather Service Norman office. Think about that. In the entire history of that office, there have been only 9 tornado emergencies. April 2026 produced one of them. That was not the only destruction that week. On April 25th, an EF2 tornado tore through Runaway Bay, Texas, killing 1 person when their manufactured home was completely destroyed. 2 days later, on April 28th, an EF3 tornado carved through the east side of Mineral Wells, Texas, with estimated peak winds of 145 miles per hour, ripping roofs, completely off homes, collapsing walls, and injuring 5 people. The damage stretched across entire subdivisions. Before that same week was over, 287 total severe weather reports had been filed across north and central Texas alone, including 226 reports of large hail up to the size of softballs. This was the most damaging severe weather event in that region in over a year. And now, with the atmosphere reloading in an eerily similar pattern, forecasters are warning that what is coming next could match or surpass it. The reason this new setup is generating so much alarm inside the meteorological community comes down to 3 words: atmospheric energy overlap. Right now, the ingredients that fuel the most violent thunderstorm outbreaks are converging across the northern and central plains simultaneously in a way that simply does not happen every week or even every month. Gulf moisture is surging northward at an aggressive rate, pushing dew points across the warm sector into the upper 60s and even brushing 70 degrees Fahrenheit in some locations. Wind shear profiles at multiple levels of the atmosphere are exceptionally favorable for the development of supercell thunderstorms. And aloft, a powerful jet stream disturbance is diving southeast out of Canada directly into this environment. Like and subscribe, because when all 3 of those ingredients are present at the same time, the atmosphere does not produce ordinary storms. It produces the kind of rotating supercells that meteorologists spend their entire career studying and that communities spend years trying to recover from. The Storm Prediction Center has been signaling elevated concern about this setup for days, well ahead of the event. Their extended outlooks have been flagging a concentrated area of potentially significant severe weather centered across portions of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, with threats extending south into Nebraska, Missouri, and Illinois. The models are in agreement that surface low pressure developing over the East Central Plains will deepen rapidly and track northeast, pulling that Gulf moisture further into an increasingly unstable environment. As the low intensifies, the warm sector ahead of it becomes a loaded gun, and the cold front racing in from the west is the trigger. By mid-afternoon on the day of peak activity, forecasters are projecting atmospheric instability levels high enough to support the kind of long-track, violent tornadoes that define the worst outbreak events in American history. What makes this particularly alarming when you compare it directly to the April events is the geographic scope. The April outbreak was yes, devastating and real, but it was largely concentrated across specific corridors in Texas, Oklahoma, and parts of the Midwest. The setup now developing does not show the same geographic containment. Forecasters are looking at a threat zone that stretches from the northern plains all the way east through the Great Lakes, and the storm Prediction Center's day 4 through 8 outlooks have already begun highlighting the potential for severe weather across a wide swath of territory that includes some of the most densely populated areas of the upper Midwest. Like and subscribe, because when a storm system has the potential to produce significant severe weather across multiple states simultaneously, the casualty potential and infrastructure damage potential multiply dramatically. Let us also talk about something that most weather coverage does not address head-on, the compounding fatigue factor. Communities across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Wisconsin, and Illinois have already been hit hard multiple times during the 2026 severe weather season. The lower Great Lakes corridor in particular, spanning from eastern Iowa into southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois, has been described by the National Weather Service Chicago office as extraordinarily active, with 15 days of severe weather outlooks issued by mid-April of this year. That is a number that would normally take years to accumulate in that region. People in these communities are rebuilding, repairing, and recovering. Their roofs are still being replaced. Their insurance claims are still being processed. And now the atmosphere is preparing to strike again. Like and subscribe, because communities in the middle of recovery do not have the same resilience they would have heading into a storm season fresh. The hail threat embedded in this setup demands its own focused conversation. During the April outbreak sequence, hail up to 4.75 inches in diameter was reported near Elwood, Missouri, and hail the size of softballs devastated areas across north and central Texas. Hail at that size does not just damage cars and roofs, it destroys them completely. A single hailstone 4 inches in diameter impacts the ground with the force of a thrown baseball traveling at near maximum velocity, multiplied thousands of times per square foot during an intense hail core. Vehicles are totaled. Roof structures are punched through entirely. Solar panels, which are now present on hundreds of thousands of homes across the affected region, can be rendered completely non-functional in seconds. Crop damage from a single large hail event can exceed tens of millions of dollars for a county that may only produce a single harvest per year. The wind threat, independent of tornadoes, is also something that must be taken seriously in this setup. When supercells collapse, or when they merge into a larger convective system, they can produce what meteorologists call bow echoes, or organized lines of thunderstorms that bow forward under the pressure of intense rear flank wind. Energy. These bow echoes can generate straight-line wind gusts exceeding 80 and sometimes 100 miles per hour across a path that stretches hundreds of miles. Unlike tornadoes, which are relatively narrow in their path of destruction, a bow echo can produce catastrophic wind damage across an enormous area in a single pass. During the June 2025 derecho event across the northern United States, peak gusts reached 120 miles per hour in Minnesota. The atmospheric setup now developing has structural similarities to that event, and forecasters are not taking that comparison lightly. Flash flooding represents the third major threat in this outbreak scenario, and in some ways, it is the most insidious because it is the one that claims the most lives in a typical severe weather season. When multiple thunderstorm cells train over the same geography, dumping their rainfall repeatedly on the same already saturated ground, water accumulates faster than any drainage system can handle, roads become rivers in minutes. Cars are swept from roadways by flows that look shallow but are moving with enough force to overturn a vehicle with a single wave. The National Weather Service has documented in study after study that more people die driving into flooded roadways than in any other flood-related scenario. This outbreak setup, with its high moisture content and slow-moving storm boundary, creates exactly the conditions where rainfall totals of 4 to 6 inches over a few hours are not just possible, but likely across the core of the threat zone. The timing of this system also creates a serious overnight threat. Models indicate that storm development could begin during the afternoon hours, but the system is not projected to exit the region till deep into the overnight period. Tornadoes and severe thunderstorms that strike after midnight carry a documented mortality advantage that no amount of technology has yet fully neutralized. People are asleep. Warning sirens are often inaudible inside well-insulated modern homes. Phone alerts, even at maximum volume, can fail to wake heavy sleepers. And in the dark, even someone who is awake cannot see a tornado on the horizon until it is dangerously close. Like and subscribe, because the overnight severe weather threat is one of the most underappreciated dangers in all of meteorology, and this storm system is setting up to exploit that window fully. Meteorologists and emergency managers across the projected threat zone have one unified message right now. Treat this like the April outbreak and then add caution on top of that. The April events produced 101 confirmed tornadoes, an EF4 that triggered a tornado emergency, deaths, injuries, and hundreds of millions of dollars in damage across multiple states. The atmosphere right now is not less energized than it was before those events. It is arguably more energized, with higher moisture values pushing further north and a stronger upper-level disturbance than what drove the April sequence. AccuWeather's summer forecast has already noted that severe weather is expected to pick up in June and July, with near to above-average tornado activity from the plains all the way to the East Coast. The storm system is arriving exactly on schedule with that forecast, and it is arriving with everything it needs to produce a multi-day, multi-state outbreak of historic proportions. If you are in or near the threat zone, the time to prepare is right now, not when the first watches are posted, and certainly not when the first warnings are issued. Identify your shelter location today. Have your weather alerts fully enabled on every device in your home. Know the difference between a watch and a warning. A watch means the conditions are right for severe weather to develop. A warning means it is happening and you need to move to safety immediately. If you have elderly family members or neighbors who may not be monitoring the weather, reach out to them before the storm arrives. If your shelter plan involves leaving a mobile home, execute that plan before the storms reach your area, not during. And if you are in a flood-prone area, know your escape routes and never attempt to drive through standing water on a roadway, regardless of how shallow it appears. The 2026 severe weather season has already been one for the record books, and it is not close to finished. The worst storm since April is not just coming. Based on everything, meteorologists are watching right now. It may well become the headline that defines June 2026, the same way those April nights defined spring. Be prepared, be alert, and stay safe. There is one more dimension to this threat that separates it from a typical severe weather event, and it has everything to do with the psychological and physical state of the communities sitting in the crosshairs. When researchers study how communities respond to repeated severe weather events within a short window of time, they consistently find a dangerous pattern called warning fatigue. People who have already been through traumatic weather events, who have already taken shelter, who have already lost property, tend to underestimate subsequent threats because their brains are wired to treat familiar situations as manageable. The April outbreak was devastating but survivable for most people, and because they survived it, the subconscious assumption can become that they will survive this one the same way, without the same level of urgency. Like and subscribe, because that assumption is exactly what kills people. Every single severe weather event has its own dynamics, its own track, its own intensity, and its own willingness to strike without mercy. Emergency managers across the central United States have been in direct communication with state and federal partners over the past several days, prepositioning resources and reviewing their mass casualty response protocols ahead of this system. That is not routine. Emergency managers do not activate those conversations for a line of ordinary thunderstorms. They activate them when the meteorological data is producing the kind of alarm that this setup is generating right now. The fact that multiple National Weather Service offices have already been briefing local emergency management agencies days in advance of the event is itself a signal that what is coming deserves the full weight of public attention. What the science of severe weather has taught us over the past 2 decades is humbling. No matter how sophisticated our modeling becomes, no matter how precise our radar technology grows, and no matter how far in advance we can issue warnings, none of it matters without an informed, prepared public that takes the threat seriously. The April outbreak, the March outbreak before it, and now this developing system are not random acts of an indifferent universe. They are predictable consequences of a changing atmospheric pattern that forecasters and climate scientists have been documenting and warning about for years. Severe weather seasons are becoming more front-loaded, more intense, and increasingly active outside the traditional tornado alley. Boundaries. Like and subscribe, because understanding that shift is not optional. It is survival knowledge for anyone who lives in the path of these systems. Preparation is not fear. Preparation is the only rational response to a threat this real, this well-documented, and this close. The clock is running on this setup, and the window to prepare, to inform, and to act is measured in hours, not days. Every person who watches this, shares it, or takes even a single preparedness step because of it, is one more person who enters this storm with a fighting chance. The worst storm since April is on its way. Do not let it find you unprepared.